to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Well, welcome to Talent Optimization. We are so glad that you are here with us today. And today we are chatting a little bit about how we implement some traction into our organization to really have our managers lead in the way that individuals need them to lead and really build that throughout the entire organization. And with me today, I have an individual who has led organizations for 25 years from an entrepreneurial standpoint. For our predictive index users out there, she's used, implemented, done all the things with PI. So welcome, Kelly. We're so glad to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of your journey to all of the different experiences you've had up to now being CEO of inVantage?
Absolutely. You know, I always say that my entrepreneurial journey started back when I was 22, and I was hired by a tech firm owner who put me in charge of human resources. I had no business at age 22 being in charge of human resources, but that was the decision he made, and I came on board. And quickly he joked that he felt I could see around corners, is what he would say. So that meant I got all of the toughest, hairiest, most egregious of the challenges in the business. However, during the time I was there, we went from 200 employees to 2,000 in 4 years, and we ended up going public. So I always refer to the start of my career like in dog years. Those 4 years, I learned so much. I ended up leading HR. I had investor relations. I had all the shared services, and I really did fall in love with the talent space. So that became the first of several executive positions, leading HR or being a chief administration officer with responsibility for the talent functions of the business for several other organizations that we helped grow and sell as well. So that grow and sell and talent component really became a core component of my career journey. But, you know, after doing that for other people for a number of years, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to start my own business. And, you know, back in 2014, I started my own talent consulting firm, and I was primarily focused in the merger and acquisition space. So helping companies buy other organizations by looking at their talent, evaluating their talent, making sure that they really understood where those synergies were going to be, as well as where the challenges were really going to come into play. And then once a deal was done, helping those companies integrate together, because we all know that that's really where, if a deal is going to fall apart, it's usually on the cultural element of the components. And I remember leaning heavily on PI during those times, which, as you know, I'm a raving fan of the tool and its capabilities. So I did that for about a year, and we grew so fast. As an entrepreneur, we talk about breaking things, and I broke everything in that first year. We grew fast. I mean, it was everything from infrastructure to people to managing a big workload and multiple projects. So I did what I think most entrepreneurs think they should do. And I merged in with another organization that I thought was really going to bring scale and help me flesh out that talent component, which we ended up doing. So I merged my firm in with another, where I became CEO of the combined organizations. And it was after landing there, I realized that the company I was merging into also needed some developmental help. It was an organization that focused in recruiting, had a great service delivery of recruitment and great talent, but operationally struggled to really get some traction in the business. And so what we ended up doing is I was part of a Vistage group, and I went to my fellow CEOs and lamented a little bit about my challenges. And that's where they said, do you know about the book Traction? Have you read it? Or have you ever heard of the entrepreneurial operating system? And I hadn't. So I picked up the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and I read it. And I read it again, and I said, this is what we need to do. So in our own talent business, we implemented the EOS model in all of its components. And I'll tell you, it was a really big game changer for us. So in about 18 months, we had grown, we did our own acquisition, we expanded our service offerings and had really done some talent upgrades in our business and felt I'll say the full effects of running a really strong operation. So I became a believer. I always joke, I drank the Kool-Aid there. And so when I exited that business successfully 5 years later, which was last year, I knew that I wanted to bring EOS to other entrepreneurs. And with my background in talent and human resources, I knew that I could really focus on helping them not only implement EOS, but strengthen their people component. We talk about having right people, right seats. Mm-hmm. So I took all of that passion, poured it into inVantage, where I'm CEO now. And I feel like I get to live the best of all of the worlds I've lived, working with entrepreneurs and their team, but also helping make sure that they've got the right talent leading their organization. So that's what's brought me to where I am today.
Awesome. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing that story, because so often I think it's, hey, we want to see ourselves in. How did other individuals do that? What does that look like? You know, one of the things that you talked about is, without necessarily naming it, was what is that business strategy and the leader having the vision to really take the team from here's the business strategy to here's the business results we're going to get to with that people component. So can you share a little bit more with us about what does vision mean inside of an organization, and how do our leaders lead with that, but also how does HR lead with that vision piece?
Absolutely. Well, I'll put it in the context of, we talk about vision, traction, and being healthy in the world of EOS. And it directly correlates to everything we do in human capital. So vision is really about making sure everybody is rowing in the same direction and understands where you're headed. I say this to entrepreneurs. If you walk around your business and ask different individuals, let's say you have a 100-person company and you go sample 20 of them. You ask them, where are you headed? What is your ultimate destination? What is it that you are on this earth to do? You are probably going to get 20 different answers if you're not leading with clear vision. So vision is about rowing in that same direction. The other analogy is, I always picture in the Olympics, if you've ever watched rowing, that is a timed, unbelievable team all moving in the same direction at the same time. And I say, imagine if just one of those rowers said, you know what, today I'm going to go the opposite direction. They're not going to make it as a team. And that's what we focus on in vision. And within the human resources component about that, that means making sure that the organizational cadences of communication, the ability to transcend and cascade messages, and clarity of how jobs and roles fit into the organization is absolutely critical, because people cannot achieve a vision if they don't know what it is. And so HR's role in vision is critical when it comes to the communication element of helping a strategic message be cascaded through the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question for you. We talk a lot about kind of head, heart, briefcase when we talk about, hiring the whole person into a job and the behaviors that an individual needs. And the heart is really that cultural piece, right? And, what I just kind of heard you say is the communication with HR, but it's also the communication on the hiring side of what is the individual's values and what are the organizational values. Are those two things aligned? Because if those aren't aligned, even if everybody knows what the vision is, we're going to be rowing in a backwards direction if we don't buy into that, because it's not also our personal vision.
Absolutely. So one of the very first things we do when we work with organizations, and this is where human capital plays a very critical role in a successful, let's say, EOS implementation, for example, or without EOS, this works as well, is we help investigate and flesh out what are the real core values of an organization. And we have a really neat technique that we take companies through to either validate what they already have or really inspect and see what they have to be. And we use those core values when they're defined. And I've not worked with a company that kept their core values exactly as they existed once we went through this exercise. Then we take those core values, and with the human capital leaders, we translate that into a couple of things that they do. Number one, we call it having right people and right seats. And we say you have got to have both. So we do that first by helping them do a talent review and evaluate how their existing team matches against the new core values, as well as three other components we call get it, want it, and capacity to do it, which we don't have to get into today. But with the core values, it's extremely powerful to connect those together.
Right. And we're not going to get into all the details today, but I just want to put a plug in. So Kelly will be leading our webinar and our Talent Optimization Foundation call on Monday. And we're going to go into a little bit more of these details with some very specific takeaways. So if you're loving what you're hearing, I just want to name, you want to be in our Talent Optimization Foundation because we will go into more detail there. So I just had to plug you, Kelly.
I'm looking forward to that because I get pretty excited about these things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when you think about human capital, when it comes to this, though, just to pin it, is that, ultimately having the right people, right seats is everything. We talk about, right people is cultural alignment, that kind of the heart piece you're talking about. The right seats is that they're able to perform the duties of a job and making sure that we're not creating jobs around people, but hiring people into the right jobs as well. And that is all human capital.
And that's such a key takeaway, right? Is that we are hiring people to the job that the organization needs in order to get the outcomes that they're specifically looking for as a business, right?
Right. You can't achieve a great vision without great people. That's what it comes down to.
No, you can't. But you also can't create jobs around people because the business may not need that specific skill set for where it's going. And guess what? Businesses outgrow people all the time, fortunately and unfortunately, right? But It's also how we step, and it's also how businesses grow.
Exactly. Couldn't agree with you more.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about kind of traction. So we've talked about vision. You mentioned traction and healthy. Do you want to share a bit more about that and what that means for those specific leaders that, are really kind of stepping in and leading individuals inside of the organization?
So the traction component, when we look at that, we always say vision without traction is hallucination. Okay, so you can have this amazing vision, but if you can't wrestle it down to the ground with accountability and execution, that's what traction is about delivering on that vision in a way that gets real results. So that really comes down to having the right tools to measure your business, measure performance, understand and predict how the business is doing on a very regular basis, having the communication cadences and meeting cadences that really make sure everything flows. So that traction component is where a lot of our work gets done. And again, that's the place where human capital can help make sure that there's connection points to everything that touches the people strategies of the business. And the healthy component is just about having a team, a leadership team that is open and honest and candid and has the ability to share and have the tough conversations, yet at the end of the day, have a little more fun working together because let's face it, a lot of teams don't always have fun working together. So we help create and foster that environment by getting vision and traction together. That's usually the result. So that's what we're working towards, is enjoying our businesses more.
Absolutely. And it's really getting at what are those 4 drivers of engagement, right? So when we know individuals are engaged in their business, they're much more productive and profitable. And those 4 drivers of engagement are job fit, manager fit, that we're specifically looking at the teams, that our teams are aligned to the strategy that we're executing on, and our organizations, and really understanding, hey, do we understand our individuals working towards the right goals inside of our organization, which essentially is our culture?
Right. Well, I think when I look at what your organization does in the predictive index opportunities, it gives the data piece, it gives you data insights to people. So everything I'm talking about still needs a support underneath it of data so you can measure and understand what motivates an individual may be different than what motivates the position. Yeah. And so it's a really interesting connection. So what you do and what the human capital component can do with that information is so powerful to make sure you've got those right people in those right seats and job matched appropriately.
Absolutely. So this has been such a great conversation. And we love to land kind of our plane here with what's one key actionable takeaway for our executives listening and what's one key actionable takeaway for our HR folks listening. And I know you've got some good golden nuggets here.
Yeah, I love this. So let's start with the HR one because HR is such a foundational component to strategy. And I would say this, if there's anything that an HR executive is really accountable for, it's making sure that the organizational structure supports the business. And oftentimes we don't take the time to step all the way back to look at, do we have an organizational structure that is meant to deliver into the future? And looking at that on a regular basis. So my point here is, if you're not looking to make sure your org structure is correct year to year, you're probably falling behind. Business is evolving so much faster And it never ceases to amaze me how long we just leave a structure sit. And obviously, over time, it will no longer support the needs of the organization. So spend the time making sure you've got the right organizational structure. We call it developing the accountability chart. But for executives, this one's going to sound simple. Run better meetings. Run meetings that are not report out sessions, but they are meetings that actually get the executive team together so you can solve really meaningful issues, chase them down, get to the root cause, and solve them once for all. Executives are notorious for bad meetings. I bet we all have been there. Run better meetings. And we'll get into that a little bit more during our session together.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for chatting with us today and really giving us those key points of vision, traction, and how we lead healthy organizations. And for our listeners that aren't in our Talent Optimization Foundation program, first off, you need to get yourself in there. You can find that information in the show notes. But if you're not in there and you want to learn more about Kelly and the organizations that she's running and really helping, Kelly, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, best place is www.invantageteam.com is our website where we provide insights and overviews to all of the things that we do with our clients, both on the EOS side of the business as well as talent.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.